What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Chill, where every single Monday I, Graham Giason Matthews, break down all the original programming that I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're breaking down the latest installment in WWE 24 series, Raw 25, the 25th anniversary of Monday Night Raw from back in January. Kind of a documentary of the day at the Manhattan Center, the Barclays Center, and everything that went into the grand celebration that was the flagship show, the 25th anniversary. Aired last week after Raw. It took me a couple days to check it out, but I'm glad I did. I was at this show. I was at Raw 25, so a lot like the WrestleMania 33, Raw 24. It was really cool to kind of relive the show through WWE 24. So anyway, this was a pretty good WWE 24, and Raw 25 overall, before we even get started, and first of all, the 24s are always great. They're never anything less than pretty good, but nonetheless, with Raw 25, it's weird because high hopes, everyone had high hopes going in, and the expectations were pretty lofty, and I think as a result, people look back on it being pretty disappointing, but I feel like with the star power they had and the execution of the simulcast was not what it should have been. They didn't really talk about this year in 24. They did talk about the troubles of doing a simulcast and having people go back and forth between arenas and between buildings. That was discussed. They didn't talk about the fact that in between segments of the Manhattan Center, they had nothing going on. And essentially, people were paying a lot of money to watch Raw on a fucking television screen. So they didn't really address that. I didn't expect them to. But even still, though, I enjoyed the show. I was not at the Manhattan Center. I was not that dumb to pay all that money, fucking $400. Who cares? I know it was the site of the first ever Raw, but the Barclays Center I had figured is where most of the stuff would go down, and that was the case. I don't care about DX. I don't care about The Undertaker. Seeing Stone Cold in person at the Barclays Center was well worth the price of admission that night. And overall, it was a fun show. Won't go down as one of the greatest Raws of all time, but it was a fun show nonetheless. So let's get started here on the Raw 25 WWE 24 special. We kick it off with a recap of Raw's history from beginning to where they are today. Miz says the show is right where it should be. Raw 25 is right where it should be in New York, the same city where it was born back in 1993. What other site would be a better host to Raw 25? So we see a production meeting the morning of Raw 25 with Kevin Dunn leading the charge. We get a rare Kevin Dunn sighting here, looking as goofy as ever. Shane did say with a simulcast, there's always room for error, which is a massive understatement with this show, but nonetheless. Kurt Angle, when he first heard the idea of WWE doing Raw 25 from both the Barclays Center and the Manhattan Center, he thought it was crazy. And, I'm sure he was not the only one who thought that as well. I know I did. Anyway, Triple H remembered being at the first night of Monday Night Raw and thinking the whole game had changed. I think he was there. I'm not exactly sure. I know he had debuted in 95, so I'm not sure if he would have been there. I don't think so. But I think he said he remembered watching the show, the first night of Raw, and remembering the whole wrestling game changing and ushering in a new era of a flagship show for WWE that would be unlike anything the company had ever done before. Kurt Angle, he said it was about all of it. Oh, sorry, he was talking about like the history of Raw and whether it was about the matches or the characters. He said Monday Night Raw was all about everything. The characters, the presentation, the production, the fans, the atmosphere, everything went into making Raw what it is today. And Shane said, to say I'm proud of my dad is an understatement. Having been there from the very beginning, I think I think I mixed him up with Triple H. Shane was the one who was there from day one of Monday Night Raw. Being there from day one to Raw 25 was a super awesome accomplishment for Shane, and he said he was super proud of his dad. Shane talks about having fun off camera when the cameras weren't rolling, and that was kind of what went into being a big part of making Raw as successful as it was, having fun, making it a great atmosphere. We saw some shots of Vince, when the cameras weren't rolling, of him addressing the crowd and kind of doing some silly things. Anyway, so Triple H talked about Vince creating characters, and not only creating characters for 25 years, but also recreating characters, bringing people back and changing them from the beginning of their tenures to where they are today. The Undertaker basically was born on Raw. I know he was around 3 years before Raw was, was started in 93, but his character evolved through the years on Monday Night Raw, despite largely being a SmackDown guy, but still. He had gone parallel with Raw for a very long time there, and that was really where his character grew. and Triple H kind of emphasizes that. Speaking of The Undertaker, he plays a pretty decent role in this documentary. We see a lot of Undertaker out of character, which we also did in the WrestleMania 33, WWE 24, which was cool to see. It's very evident that in the last, I would say, 5 years or so, the WWE, or maybe specifically The Undertaker, I'm not really sure if it's a joint effort, or it was more Taker, I'm not exactly sure, but he's become more humanized in recent years. It kind of started when he appeared on the Triple H DVD for like 5 seconds to talk about Triple H, and even that was a pretty big deal, because we didn't really see Triple H, or rather The Undertaker, out of character all that often. So it was cool to see then. We kind of see it like all the time now. Between that 24, this 24, we see it quite a few times. Like even John Cena talking about The Undertaker, the way he talked about The Undertaker in the build-up to WrestleMania 34 just really goes to show how much they've truly humanized The Undertaker, which is cool because we've gotten the Dead Man, we've gotten the Phenom for so long now. It's cool to see that there's another side to Mark Calloway, another side to I almost said Mark Henry, to The Undertaker. And this documentary kind of illustrated that, which was really cool. So anyway, we see Undertaker, he talks about Raw and remembering how much it's changed and how much the game had changed, a lot like Triple H had said, when they went live. And going live every single week is not an easy task, but Raw managed to do it, and they've managed to do it every week for 25 years. And he, again, a lot like Triple H talked about how that just changed everything for WWE moving from that point forward. Taker arrives at the Manhattan Center along with X-Pac, Sean Waltman. They kind of communicate and catch up and whatnot. X-Pac has his dog with him, which I think he also out of the Hall of Fame a few weeks ago, which was interesting. He said he found it on the street like about a year ago, and its jaw is broken, so its tongue is always hanging out. But he always has this dog with him every single time I see X-Pac now, whether it be at a show or in a convention or Hall of Fame or whatever. He has that dog constantly, everywhere he goes. So good for him, but it just, I don't know, just interesting. Anyway, so Shawn Michaels and Scott Hall talking about being at the first ever show for WWE at the Manhattan Center, the first ever episode of Monday Night Raw, and being at that same show in that same building 25 years later. Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross were on commentary for the Manhattan Center portion of Raw 25 and talk about the honor of being on the chair. They've had so many event chairs over the years for pay-per-views, for special shows, but they've never been on the chair until now. They only now are just on a chair for Raw 25, which is pretty cool. But nonetheless, Lawler does say that superstars are what helped make Raw 25 years, helped it last 25 years. It was all about the superstars, all about the characters. If it wasn't for them, Raw would have never got past night 1. So we see The Miz. He talks about being a Raw guy through and through career-wise. That was where he won his WWE Championship, his first ever WWE title, and his only to date. Hopefully that won't be the case. But anyway, he did win his first WWE Championship on Raw back in 2010. He talks about winning the Intercontinental Championship for the first time on not only an episode of Raw, but Raw 1000. Going on to become an integral part of Raw 25, contending for the Intercontinental Championship on that show against Roman Reigns, which he would end up winning. He talked about being, just being in complete disbelief about being a part of Raw 25, and you see all the tons and tons and tons of talent backstage, from the current talent, the SmackDown talent, the legends, the production crew, everybody is on hand for Raw 25, both at the Manhattan Center and at the Barclays Center. Eric Bischoff talks about it being, feeling like a homecoming, and Trish Stratus says the same backstage. Chris Jericho comes out of his hotel. We see him for a little bit as well. We see him coming out of his hotel, being greeted by fans. One of them says, "Congrats on your match with Omega," and that's the only compliment that Jericho responds to is in his entire interaction with the fans at that point. So he was very moved by the fact that someone had complimented him on his match with Jericho, or rather Omega, from a few weeks earlier, which was also crazy, by the way, too. I know people were talking about this at the time, but it's so surreal that Jericho went from having one of the best matches all year so far, and it was like 3 days into 2018, with Kenny Omega at the Wrestle Kingdom show, and then appearing at Raw 25 mere weeks later. Only Jericho can get away with that, other than maybe The Rock, if you wanted to go to New Japan. But beyond The Rock, or maybe Stone Cold, and obviously maybe John Cena. Okay, a few others, but Jericho is a part of an elite few that could appear at a New Japan show and then come right back home a few weeks later for Raw 25. I thought that was super cool. And not only that, he wore his Omega, or rather Jericho Club, Alpha Club, whatever, that shirt that it was kind of a big part of the build for that match with Omega at the Wrestle Kingdom show. He wore that during his Raw 25 appearance. Like, that's amazing. It was so cool. But anyway, we see Stone Cold Steve Austin talk about being there, and being there brings back memories of his time with WWE and all the great memories he created in and outside of the ring. Balor talks about watching the first ever Raw as a fan, now being a part of it at the Manhattan Center with the D-Generation X stable, and Scott Hall and X-Pac and everyone else. Speaking of X-Pac, he gets his beard and hair trimmed before the show. It's like 5:40, and he journeys out into the city to get his hair trimmed. And I thought there would be like an obstacle here, or some sort of like an issue, and there'd be more of a conflict. But nope, he just leaves the arena around like 5:30 or 6 o'clock to get his beard trimmed with his dog, like I talked about earlier. And that's it. So he was able to make it back in time, which is cool. I guess it was around the Manhattan Center or whatever. Anyway, Stone Cold Steve Austin, we see the segment where he stuns the McMahons in the middle of the ring, which was amazing to view live. The pop for Stone Cold came across just absolutely amazing on TV, but being there live for it was just unreal. I had never seen Stone Cold before that night in person, so to experience that was just on an entirely different level. The crowd responded just remarkably well to it. They went nuts for Stone Cold, even 15 years after the fact, 20 years after he went, he was in his prime in WWE. He is still one of the most, if not the most over MFR in this company, which is amazing. That whole segment was unbelievable, and to relive it on this special was also really, really cool. The Miz says it makes you kind of feel like a kid again. Rollins agrees, and everyone involved in this segment loved it. You see Stone Cold just with a giant smile on his face. Vince hugging Stephanie and Shane backstage. Shane is thanking Stone Cold and Vince for such a great moment, such a great segment. They all really thoroughly enjoyed it. You could genuinely tell that they loved being a part of that. We see Jericho backstage in his backstage segment with Elias, which was also amazing, putting Elias on the list. And he says being backstage was kind of mysterious. It's kind of leaving the fans wanting more as opposed to appearing in the ring, which was kind of cool. And I love that whole interaction too. Then Elias, as if that wasn't big enough, he went on to have a segment right after that in the ring with John Cena and Jimmy Fallon. Now, granted, Jimmy Fallon didn't get in the ring, thankfully not, but he was there in the front row, got to address Jimmy Fallon, and then lay out John Cena on the 25th anniversary of Raw, which is huge, a major spot to be in. And that was Elias, which was really, really cool. Then we see shots of Miz winning the Intercontinental Championship against Roman Reigns, which was a great match. The crowd went, I would say they went nuts. Miz was like, they kind of started to cheer me. It's like, dude, they really cheered you. Like, people were really happy to see you win the Intercontinental Championship. And it was also about seeing Roman drop the belt, too. I understand that. But it was also, about the Miz and the fact that he's come a long way and he's been a great champion and he's done a lot for that championship. So, anyway, Miz even admitted he tried not to cry in that moment. It came to a point where he almost cried, but he didn't. But he also recognized that he earned the crowd's respect. So immediately after that, he is ushered out of the building for the Manhattan Center, and he has no idea what's going on. It was probably just a quick thing. They probably had no idea Miz was going to be going to the Manhattan Center. It was probably like one of those things where like, the crowd's about to riot because they don't have stars, and they're watching the fucking show on a Tron. Get Miz over here ASAP. Let's go. And it was a pretty stressful situation for Miz to be in. But I think it goes to show how highly they view him to put him in that spot. To view him as such a big star and as a guy who can really do anything and to control a crowd in the palm of his hand. No one is better at doing that currently in the company than The Miz. And they probably clearly had that in mind when they realized that the Manhattan Center was getting kind of pissed off about not getting any real star power up until the end. So they got that, with The Miz showing up. He can't even change. That's how quickly he has to leave the arena. He rushes to the arena. He's told, just go out there and have fun. There's not even a script. And Miz kills it. He goes out there. The crowd goes nuts for him. He's having fun with him. And he's genuinely enjoying himself. And it's one of those things where you hear people talk about it all the time. Stone Cold Steve Austin talked about it on his podcast just a few days ago about when you don't have a script in front of you, that's when the real emotion is evoked. That's when the real fun begins. Because you're not going off a fucking teleprompter, you're not going off a script. Like, I don't know, I feel like it's just way better to go off the cuff and not like say fuck you and all this other stuff, but, you know, just have fun. Just have fun. That's clearly what Miz was doing, and he loved it. He loved being a part of that atmosphere. And he feels like, you know, he kind of went over some of the fans in the Barclays Center. He felt he full-fledged, you know, felt that he had won over the respect of the fans at the Manhattan Center. And that's the hardcore crowd. For them to chant thank you, Miz, and granted, that was part of just because they had no stars on the show while they were watching Raw in a fucking Titantron. But anyway, it was a pretty cool spot for him to be in. And he was genuinely moved for the crowd to be chanting for him. Now, I know he was a babyface many years ago, but that obviously went nowhere. Maybe the time will come again for him to go babyface, and the crowd will embrace him more, you know, genuinely, more, you know, much more naturally, more organically this time, because people have, you know, kind of turned the page on the Miz. They've kind of come to embrace him, come to respect him, and realize and recognize what he's all about and what he's capable of in the ring and on the mic. Anyway, so we see a segment of, you know, with Finn Balor, D-Generation X. Balor's like, this is such a huge moment. It's absolutely poetic to be here with my friends, Carl and Luke, Anderson and Gallows, being with D-Generation X of all people, and, you know, Scott Hall and X-Pac and everyone else. And to have gone from watching the first ever Raw as a kid to being here on the show with them is absolutely poetic, he says. So Shane says, Raw 25 gave you a flavor of where we used to be and where we are today, before the episode gets closed out by Get Loud For Me by Gizzle is the name of the song. So I thoroughly enjoyed the special. It's about 50 minutes long. The time always flies by. The 24 hours are always great. There was a lot more recapping than I was hoping for. There was a lot of recapping of the show itself, which they usually do, but I was hoping for behind-the-scenes stuff. But it was still a really cool special. And again, being there also kind of made me biased towards this special, because it kind of made me relive certain aspects of that Raw 25 experience, which was a lot of fucking fun. So anyway, guys, check out Raw 25, that installment of WWE 24 on WWE Network. It's up now, aired last week after Raw. I'll talk about whatever airs tonight after Raw on WWE Network and Chill next week. But as we speak, I will be at Raw tonight for the Superstar Shakeup in Hartford. It's going to be a great night. It's all about shaking things up again, brother. Or as Hulk or Vince would say, whatever. So, should be a fun night. Check out my full written review of the show. It should be up tomorrow on nextEraWrestling.net. And stay tuned for more installments of WWE Network and Chill in the weeks to come. And also, quick plug here, I did have a special one-off review of the Andre the Giant documentary that aired on HBO about a week ago. Put up a full audio review, my 2 cents on the special, yesterday here on the channel, so check that out as well. So anyway, guys, be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. I am Graham G. Matthews. Have a great Monday, and I'll catch your ass down the road.